Arsenal piled the pressure on Man City on Tuesday night as they dismantled a dismal Chelsea side at the Emirates. The second half petered out into a slightly turgid affair, but the first half was everything that we've liked about Arsenal this season. Press, counter-press, aggression, front-footedness, patterns, squeeze, shape, and the final ball was superb, with two finishes from Odegaard that were a lot harder than they looked. However, despite the scoreline, I couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed, because I think Mikel Arteta has made a huge error that may have cost us the Premier League title. Long-time watchers of this channel will know I rarely criticise Mikel. I think he's the best manager in the league behind Pep and could end up being an era-defining coach. But like everyone, he isn't perfect, and if I'm going to praise him a lot, I feel it's also important to keep myself conscious of areas of growth potential so my analysis doesn't get cloudy and rose-tinted and stays as objective and clear as possible. Before I outline the error, I want to say this. In this analysis, instead of using Rob Holding's name, I'm going to use the phrase wrong profile. This is to do two things. Firstly, to highlight the coach's part in this and not muddy the waters with the idea that this was primarily any individual player's problem, but I believe that's a supplementary factor to the problem as I'll lay out. And secondly, I want to emphasise that it's not personal. I have no vendetta against any player on any kind of personal level, apart from Bruno Fernandes. In the right system and environment, most top-level players can reach a certain level. Football fans pick out individuals when things go wrong because it's easy analysis, and end up in cyclical, it's completely his fault, he's the worst footballer ever, versus it's completely not his fault, stop scapegoating one player arguments, when the problem lies in the fact that the system means that the conversation even exists in the first place. The problem is our adaptation to the wrong profile of defender, not one individual. Since the game against Anfield, we've seen a huge adaptation to the wrong profile's inclusion in the team. We've seen Partey dropping into the right side in build-up against Southampton, we've seen Jesus dropping deep to receive from the first line against West Ham, and we've seen drop-offs in our right-hand-sided performers data. Further adaptation killed us against Man City. Normally, Arsenal play in a man-for-man press when the ball is in the opposition build-up and we're out of possession. This has a number of benefits, including forcing teams to go long when they run out of passing options, forcing them to commit more men back and have less to play with when they do play through you, frustrating teams psychologically, committing numbers forward for turnovers, and much more. But as explained in this video, a man-for-man press requires profiles of defenders who can defend the space you leave in behind and handle individual threats with reliability. Against City, without the right profile and up against the threat of Haaland, we adapted again. Instead of going man for man, we needed two players up against Haaland. It meant we couldn't go man for man in their first phase, and it caused us problems. City had a spare man at all times as we were occupied 2v1 further back, and they could evade us trying to block the entry pass, and our wrong profile at the back meant we couldn't control space and transition well enough, and eventually, we were punished. There were other issues on the night, but that was the main one in my view, which caused the individual weaknesses to be highlighted. Trying to be proactive in stopping the ball going into midfield, but without actually having that numerical superiority, meant we created a huge space in behind that De Bruyne punished ruthlessly. In my opinion, Arteta should have done something on the night, but there's a bigger problem here. The wrong profile in all of these games causes a knock-on effect because of the adaptation in various ways to our press and structure. And it's not even the wrong profile's fault. By the way, sorry to plug, but it is relevant. I want to recommend The Rewatch. It's a show where myself and the brilliant analyst Rohan Jivan live commentate and analyse a half of football from every Arsenal match. And we go into what happened in the City game in a lot more detail, and you can see that playing out. So with all that going around in my head, when I checked my phone to see the lineups at 7 PM on Tuesday night, I was really angry. I mean, I wasn't really angry. It's football, it's not that deep, but you know what I mean. We know Mikel has seen what the issue is because of our adaptation, and he's picked Saliba all season. So if he knows where the issue is, even if he saw it as something other than I do, and was willing to adapt for this game, why not be braver and stick Kiwior in earlier? For me, the only way I could make head or tails of him sticking with the wrong profile in the last 3 games was that Kiwior wasn't ready or wasn't right for it, which now completely goes out the window. Now, before you write your comments, I just want to give some responses to the inevitable counter-arguments, which I do think probably have some validity. Firstly, there's the idea that you have to give players time, opportunities, and allow them to play through mistakes. But for me, that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the problem and a mischaracterization of the argument. It's not how top-level football works. When you have someone who limits your line and has less on-ball quality, when in the modern game your centre-backs have the most touches out of any of your players, you stifle your entire game. For me, you almost have to divorce your front 5 and your back 5 in terms of impact on overall football quality and chance creation. You can probably have a striker with an off day who loses all their duels, misses 2.3 XG worth of chances and looks like they're playing with a beach ball, and still get a win. But if your back 5, your foundation, aren't at the races, losing duels, not selecting passes correctly, unable to defend space, you invite pressure, and your entire final third play doesn't matter because it becomes a basketball game. There's a reason top coaches often prioritise their defence in the market at the start of their time at a new club. So the idea that you let a front 5 player play through their mistakes is fine, but and I'm getting dangerously close to saying his name, if you play the wrong profile in the back five, you destabilise the whole unit very quickly. And when you believe you have the right profile on the bench, considering what we know about Kiwior's athleticism, on-ball quality and skill set so far, that's madness to me. You don't try and drive a Lamborghini off-road because you need it to work through some errors. Just choose the right tools for the job. In my opinion, part of the reason Man City looks so stable the second half of this season is a move towards more centre-back come full-back types, like Ake and Stones. I don't think it's any coincidence that their form looks so much better without Cancelo in the team, as good as he is. When you have athletic, tall, big space, top quality 1v1 defenders who can also progress and add quality on the ball, you're onto a winner. It's why I'm thinking about doing another video on Zinchenko and how we might see an adaptation away from him at left back. He might be somewhere else. But last time I suggested a player move position, I got called a wretched liar, so maybe I'll leave that for now. Kiwior was not perfect, by the way. He was conservative on the ball and he lacked penetration between the lines. If you'd like to hear my full assessment of Kiwior's full debut, you can check out the bonus content to this video where I look at it in detail on patreon.com/thedifferentknock, or you can sign up below by becoming a channel member to get that and loads of other benefits. Thank you to this commenter on the last video, who I promise I didn't pay off. The second big protestation, I imagine, is dropping Kiwior in might be too much for him. And for me, that's a discredit to him. I think he's more than up for it. He's a full Polish international who's played at the World Cup. He's 23, he's not 10. I understand Arteta doesn't want to drop him in and scar him at an Anfield maybe, but that's why you play him at a West Ham or a Southampton once you recognise the issue, which we know Arteta did. You have a squad and you have to use it. Lots of people talk about two left-footed centre-backs, but Kiwior is a lot more ambipedal than he gets credit for, and while he played it very safe the other night, often over to Gabriel, if he continues to play, I'm sure we'll see his on-ball quality as his confidence grows, and he'll start feeding our right-hand side. The final protestation might be about dressing room dynamics and keeping people happy. And while I understand that, I promise you, winning football games keeps people way happier than allowing someone to play 90 minutes because you don't want to upset them. That's just the ones I can think of, but drop your thoughts in the comments. So, why didn't Arteta change it? Well, maybe he didn't want to change too much, but he made 3 changes against Chelsea and said himself he needed to shake things up. So I don't buy that that wasn't at least an option. Maybe he wanted to rely on experience, but what good is experience when that experience stops you playing the way you want? Maybe he thought he could get away with the adaptation and we just got outplayed. Maybe. But for me, this is a pattern. In my opinion, Arteta, at times, is too trusting of players that aren't doing the business. Willian made 37 appearances for Arsenal Football Club in 2021. 37. He was unavailable for 6 games as well. We only played 49 games, and he was unavailable for 6 of them with injuries and illnesses. At the beginning of the season, with only 1 win in 10 games, and Arsenal crying out for some creativity, it took 2 months for Arteta to change something, finally bringing in Smith Rowe against Chelsea on that fateful Boxing Day. Look at this team from the game before. Look at it. We were in the trenches. And at the end of last season, he took far too long to bring Nketiah into the team. You wonder if Eddie had been trusted a bit sooner than April, when Lacazette hadn't scored from open play since early November, what could have happened? And even then, it was only because Lacazette had COVID and couldn't play against Southampton. You might then conclude that Arteta is stubborn, but I really don't think it is that. He does adapt and he does try new things. I just think he's really loyal to his players and really trusts them. But sometimes you have to be ruthless. Look at Real Madrid. Their fans booed Ronaldo in the Champions League, their highest scorer ever in that competition, and for Real Madrid, by the way, a man who scored over a goal a game for them in a year where they came second by 1 point and won the Champions League. They're adding Jude Bellingham to a midfield of Kroos, Modric, Tchouaméni, Camavinga and Valverde. I mean, I don't ever want to become that club. Part of the reason I love Arsenal is the family feeling. The community, the love the club give back, and the fans give the club. We allow players to develop. We grow superstars. But we are competing with them, or aiming to. We have to become a little more ruthless with underperformance. Part of the reason Madrid have their record in the Champions League that they do is that fan culture. Players simply don't survive if they can't appease the Madridistas, so they only attract players and characters who can, and weed out the others. They historically have killers, ruthless performers who always step up. It's why the Patino news has to be a bit of a symbol of a new mentality at Arsenal. We can't get down about it. We don't have time to develop players now in our cycle, and if he was good enough to go straight in, we'd keep him. We need just pre-peak world-class talent this summer, and whatever you think of Patino, he'd be a bit of a project to start with. Madrid let Ødegaard go, and they might win another Champions League this year, so I think they're over it. Without the injuries to Saliba and Tomiyasu, who knows where we'd be? And it's almost too depressing to think about it. But this summer, and moving forward, Arteta must be absolutely ruthless. He can no longer be loyal to guys who, however nice, whatever their potential, aren't right for us anymore. Once he has all the tools, he has to be cutthroat with underperformance. And up to now, I don't think he has been. Here's hoping that that will change.